Hello, and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name is Ariana Joy. I'm your host, and I'm a human design reader and teacher. And today, I want to talk a little bit about something that's been on my mind a lot, which is fear, specifically how we understand it and look at it from a human design perspective. Because the thing is that we are all here to deal with fear in some way or another, and understanding how to do that is so important. But we're not actually all built to deal with it in the same way. So I want to talk about, what it's here to teach us, why it's still around, and then also how you specifically can turn your experience of fear into an incredible gift or even a talent for yourself and other people. By the way, if you want free human design information on your chart on the reg, make sure to subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so you always know when the next video is up as soon as it is up. So first off, when we talk about fear in human design, we have to talk about the spleen center. So there are 9 energy centers in your human design chart, and each one is attuned to or deals with a specific flavor or category of energy. And the spleen deals with everything instinct, intuition, and of course, fear, specifically instinctual fear. The spleen is something called an awareness center, which means that it's here to pick up on information and help us understand the world around us better so we can make the best decisions for ourselves. And by the way, there are actually 2 other awareness centers, and they also kind of deal with their own versions of fears. They're good to understand, but when I'm talking about fear, at least in this episode, I'm talking specifically about instinctual fear, which is usually what we're thinking about when we're talking about fear itself, and that lies in the spleen center. So the spleen center gathers information and then tells us about it, and it does that in a really spontaneous, quick, in the now way. So the way the spleen talks to us is through these little in the moment hits or pings of knowing and knowing what to do. Because for a very, very long time, the spleen center was only about making sure that we stay alive. Like it was survival instinct. That's what this instinctual awareness is. And it still is about that. It's just not the only thing it's meant to do anymore, but it is the oldest awareness center we have. And it's here to ensure that we survive. And when you need to survive, it's all about acting and adapting in the moment as fast as possible. Because if like a threat is coming at you, you can't really like sit down and think about like mentally what you should do or like how you feel emotionally about this. So the spleen is very, very spontaneous, and it's responding to what's going on right now, which is super cool. Like it's very fast and it's a really elegant system. The thing is that one of the fastest ways to get us to pay attention is through fear, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like fear itself isn't necessarily bad because it keeps us alive. And thank God for that, or else we wouldn't be here. The problem is that because the spleen is so freaking ancient, and so are all of the instincts that go along with it because they're basic survival instincts, it hasn't really like gotten the message that not every situation or quote unquote threat that we experience is, about survival, but it will still apply these old fears about survival to any situation in our lives, even when they don't have anything to do with that. And nowadays in our daily life, for most of us, they just don't. For example, a lot of people have a lot of fear of being on stage fright, being seen by a lot of different people. When going up and giving a speech or going on stage to sing karaoke with your friends probably isn't a life or death situation unless you give like a very inflammatory speech or you're terrible at karaoke. Or maybe, when you want to work on a creative project, but you're so terrified it won't come together in the right way, or it won't be seen by anyone, or it won't, make the impact that you want it to. Fear doesn't really know the difference between these situations and ones that will actually like get you murked, because in the past when we were faced with decisions to make and the spleen center was the ultimate decision maker, most of those decisions were about survival. Pretty much every decision we were making with the spleen was life or death, because basically every decision we were making was life or death. And even if it wasn't a life or death situation, we still needed to stay on high alert. So basically now that means that our fear is a little trigger happy in a time when we don't need to be doing that all the time, or even most of the time. It's just not really helpful. And so when we live out of that fear so often, like we make it our base frequency that we're taking action out of, it holds us back from being our highest selves, because it's not just about surviving right now, it's learning how to thrive. So this fear, if you live out of it, it's actually going to hold you back from your evolution and your growth and being your highest best self, which is ironic because the spleen was supposed to be like helping us do that. But we're in a different time that's focusing on different things where we have different goals. So, when you're following your dreams or, walking into some uncertainty or doing something new and interesting, even if it's something that you're meant to do, oftentimes your fear is still going to say like, no, 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 we're not sure of that. We have never done this before. What if this doesn't work out and we get ended? And theoretically, that keeps us quote unquote safe, but it also keeps us very small and stuck a lot of the time. And that's just not what we're here to do right now. In this era of spiritual and energetic evolution, if we really want to move forward, we have to learn to deal with fear in a new way and use the spleen in a new way. Question is, how do we do that? Well, first off, we need to understand the difference between fear and intuition, or rather fear and an intuitive feeling that you should not be doing something. Both intuition and fear are based in awareness because they're literally both different versions of instinct talking to us, but they're different expressions of it. So when intuition talks to us, it will feel like a gentle guidance or just knowing. It will feel like you are just aware of this thing and tuned into it, whether you can explain why or how you know it or not. And when it's your intuition telling you no, it will just say, no, not that. Like, don't do that. Don't go that way. That's not true. That's not right. That's not aligned for me. On the other hand, when fear talks to us, it is much more contracting, restricting, and forceful. And it's usually pretty freaking loud. And it won't feel good either. It will feel incredibly charged. And when we know the difference between the two, that's how we can understand which one is talking to us and which one we are really supposed to be listening to. Because if you are moving forward into something like, writing a blog post and all of this fear comes up, that's probably not your intuition talking to you, especially if it feels so gripping and tight and it's like holding you back. Secondly, all of us have to learn how to deal with this fear in some way, but the way that we are built to do it is differently. And that depends on whether you have a defined spleen center or an undefined spleen center. Now, if you have a defined spleen center, you are someone who creates your own instinctual hits and fear responses. So you are really here to get good at hearing and following these instinctual, intuitive hits in the moment and trusting them because they are guiding you in some way. But for you, and I hate to tell you this, but no matter what, when you get an intuitive ping from the spleen, because the fear is also aware of what's going on, when you get that intuition, that hit from your intuition saying like, ooh, we should go this way, the fear kind of like slams open the door and it's like, what did you say? There's something going on. There's a threat here. And so it kind of wants to be in on the game too. Which means that anytime you get an intuitive hit, the fear will probably rise up with that, even if it's not something that you should be afraid of, even if it is your intuition actually saying that that thing is right for you. Which means that for you, you need to get really good at and focus on discerning when that fear is actually serving you and when it just isn't. And the key to knowing which one it is that when you feel drawn to something, you kind of get that hit, or you want to do it, or you're excited about it, but you're holding yourself back because you're scared it might not be safe, like, or completely 100% safe, or there's some uncertainty in it or something like that. That's usually the issue. Then you need to just feel the fear and do it anyway, because at this point, it's the fear just overgeneralizing and trying to like put a blanket on you and keep you safe. But at that point, it's really not helping you. It's holding you back. It's just showing up because that's what it does. Like, it doesn't know any better. It's just trying to help. But it's not because you shouldn't be doing this thing. And actually, Elizabeth Gilbert, who's the author of Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic, and also someone who has dealt with like a lot of fear in her life, sums it up so well when she says, anytime I start a new creative project, the fear rises. And the first thing I do is say to it, thank you so much for how much you care about me and how much you don't want anything bad to happen to me. I really appreciate that. Your services probably aren't needed here because I'm just writing a poem. Like, no one's gonna die. But, fear can still be helpful sometimes, because if someone shady is trying to talk to you or, get you into their white windowless van and your body's like, ooh, yikes, no thanks. No matter how cute those puppies you tell me you have in your van are, that's probably a helpful note from fear. The good news is that for you as someone with a defined spleen center, the way it talks to you is going to be very consistent. So you're going to get really good at being able to tell the difference between the two. When you tune in, you'll start to realize, oh, this is my intuition telling me that I shouldn't do this thing, or, oh, no, this is just fear trying to keep me safe. Actually, I really am supposed to be doing that thing. On the other hand, if you have an undefined spleen center, you are someone who picks up on and amplifies fear from others. So you feel this very strongly, but you don't actually create it for yourself, at least not consistently. You're just incredibly sensitive to it. And that means that most of the fears you experience aren't actually yours. You're basically an empath for other people's instincts and fears, so you're very tuned into that. But they actually aren't even yours to worry about. You just have an empathic sensitivity to them. And that means that your job is to become very clear about which fears are yours and which aren't, because most of them aren't. And if they come out of nowhere, like a fear just popped up and it doesn't really look like it's actually connected to anything, it's definitely not yours. And you literally don't even have to engage with it because it's not giving you any valuable information for you in your decision-making process. The whole idea behind the spleen is that when someone with a defined spleen center is getting those pings or those hits, it's supposed to be a form of instinct that they can rely on. For you, it's not consistent and you pick it up from any other people anyway. So you're picking up on their instinctual hits and it's not your body talking to you. So it's not actually relevant to you. You're just very attuned to that energy that someone else is feeling. So while someone like me is here to feel the fear and do it anyway, you're actually here to just detach from fear and let it go and move forward, because 90% of that stuff isn't even yours, and it's definitely not yours to worry about or even like conquer or overcome. And that's important to know, because if you aren't aware of that, if you aren't able to separate yourself from that, it's going to feel very overwhelming, and it's going to be really easy to identify as a very scared person who can't move forward or stay stuck in this scared space and not do anything. But when you can detach from that outside fear and remember that it's not yours, oh man, you will start to feel and look and be so brave. And I actually know, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but people with undefined spleen centers are the people who have the potential to be some of the most fearless people in the world when they can detach from that outside fear or instinct energy coming from other people, which again sounds weird because a lot of people with undefined spleen centers think that they are just like the biggest wimps, like they're scared of everything and they feel so scared all the time. But in reality, when you have an undefined center, that means that you're very sensitive to that energy outside of you, but you're not really meant to engage with it because it's not you. So when you can do that, you will start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm on top of the world. Like, look at me go. Like, I can sense all this fear from outside of me and I'm still doing it. Plus, you will also tap into your form of intuition at a higher frequency, because when you can keep yourself separate from the stuff that's not yours, or at least not identify with it, it becomes so obvious that this is an intuition for that energy. And you'll become even more aware and even more attuned. And you'll realize that it's just telling you what's going on with someone else, because you're an empath for other people's like fear and instinct, but you're also an empath to their intuition. So people with undefined spleen centers can become incredible intuitive guides and actually help other people really tune into their own intuition. Another thing to know is that each gate in the spleen center, so the numbers that are on the spleen center, represents a different form of instinctual awareness, a specific instinctual awareness. And that means that when you have a gate defined in your chart in the spleen center, it's a specific intuition you have, but also a specific fear you have, because remember that intuition and fear are both expressions of the same thing, which is instinct. And knowing which ones you have will give you so much more insight into how to deal with your fear when it comes up, because you'll be able to identify what the root cause is. And when you work through that fear or you release it, you'll also get that awesome nugget of an intuitive gift that's along with that gate. So for example, and this is actually why I'm doing this episode, I have gate 32 defined in my chart, which is an intuition for what will and won't work. It's an attunement or an awareness of whether or not something has the potential to last. Does it have the capability to continue and stand the test of time? However, the fear that goes along with that is the fear of failure. Like, it's this gripping fear that things will not work out, they won't last, that they will fail, or that I will be a failure. And I also have this as my conscious sun gate, which means it's a very strong influence over my chart. It's the top energetic theme in my human design, and I feel it very deeply. But it was really only just last week that I realized how many of my struggles with not moving forward or feeling stuck or feeling really scared specifically came down to gate 32 and the fear of failure. Because I've been wanting to put out a lot more stuff, a lot more courses, more content, more things to grow my business recently, but I couldn't do it. And to be honest, this fear has held me back in my life forever, because I've always been afraid that if I don't know that this is going to work, like I don't know that this is going to last, that this is all going to come together perfectly in this this bundle, and I can't be sure of that, then I'm like, oh, I can't even do it. Like I was just too afraid to even try. Because if it fails, then what? Then do I have to go back and fix it? What if I don't know what went wrong? What if I can never tell? What if I move forward and I put all this effort into something and then it just doesn't come to be? And there was a part of me that was conscious of that, but this was actually so deeply embedded in me that I didn't realize this was happening, to the point where I would get excited about, creating a course or writing an email or whatever, and I'd sit down to do it and I would just get sluggish and tired and unhappy, and I could feel myself feeling like restricted. So I wanted to expand, but it was also holding me back, and I just wasn't doing any of this stuff. I wasn't putting this stuff out, and it was incredibly frustrating to me, because I was like, do I not like doing this anymore? Should I maybe not even? Honestly, there were a couple of times I considered leaving Just Follow Joy this year. I was like, should I not be doing this? This is my intuition telling me that I'm not excited about this and I shouldn't do it. And I was so frustrating, because I was so in this in between of doing it and not doing it. Do I want to? I don't know. Should I do it? I did. Gate 32 is a Libra gate, if that waffling sounds familiar. And so eventually I got to a point where I realized it wasn't my intuition, because I love doing this stuff. It was a deep, deep fear that I would commit myself, and in the end, it wasn't going to last. So it's pointless, that it would be a waste of my energy, and I was going the wrong way. And looking back now, every time I was getting sluggish or too tired to work on something that I thought I wanted to do or create, I had heard a little voice saying, but what if you put it out and it doesn't work? Like, what if you put this out and no one buys it? What if, you keep doing this and it just you never move forward from where you are? So I just wouldn't take action. And then that's why I was in this excruciating place where I wasn't in and I wasn't out, and it wasn't serving me in any way. And it wasn't my fear's fault. It was just trying to keep me safe through this fear of failure, because way back in the day, this was actually an instinct for which new adaptive things or which, new things we should use in our tribe to make sure that we adapt and we move forward and we survive. So every time I was hitting up on this fear, it was literally a fear of dying. Like, it was a fear that if I do this thing and it's the wrong thing and it doesn't work, I'm straight up gonna die. But I had to tell myself that's not what's gonna happen. If this doesn't work, I can go back and fix it. I can figure it out. I can do it again. If this entire business doesn't work, that's not a problem. I can start again. It's not the end of the world, and it's not the end of me. And what's so funny is, because these fears can be applied to even the smallest of situations, my fear actually wasn't even whether or not my business would work out. It was whether or not these small things I was putting out would work and move me forward. And that's a really easy thing to fix. You can just change it next time. If you're committed to your goal and you know what you want, then you can just do it differently and learn what did and didn't work from the last time you did it. So I told myself, you know what? I know I love this. I absolutely love human design and creating and teaching, and none of us know if everything is going to come together. We can only do our best. So if it doesn't work, fuck it. I'll adapt, or I'll make it better, or I'll just move on. I want to make sure that I've given everything I have, because if I do and it still doesn't work out, that's the only way I'll know that I did everything I could and it's still not meant to be. And we all have to take chances. No one knows for sure. So I'm just going to move forward. And I cannot tell you how amazing this has been for me. I cannot tell you how free I feel. It is incredible. I feel more creative, more hopeful, more full of love for what I do again. I'm finally able to work and put stuff out. And it came from understanding and really breaking down this fear for myself, all coming from knowing how I was designed. So that's me. But no matter who you are, again, we do each have to deal with and overcome fear in one way or another, because at the end of the day, we can't only operate out of fear and hit our biggest goals and be our highest selves and live a satisfying life. We can't fulfill the role that we're here to play at this time in our evolution by doing that. We aren't meant to be doing that right now. We're meant to be looking for a way to thrive, not just survive. And knowing our designs can make it so much easier to do that. So I hope this helped. This is a bunch of stuff that I wish I would have known before in the past. And by the way, we talked about the spleen center today, but there are actually, again, 9 centers in your human design chart that will give you so much information on the way you're built to operate and succeed and hit your goals. And if you want to learn what those are, we have a course all about it, and it is linked in the description for you to grab. But that's it for now. I hope this helped. As always, you rock, and I will talk to you next time.